Well, to expand on what this means for the future of some of the biggest tech giants, I'm now joined by Dan Ives. He's the Managing Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities with more than 2 decades of experience in the tech sector. As always, Dan, thanks very much for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. Now,
Great.
So much is really based on expectations when you have an expo like the one Mark just walked us through. What are your initial takeaways, and how do you see the expectations at this point?
Look, I think right now, there's an arms race going on in tech. From Apple to Microsoft, to Google and others. I think if you look at Apple, the WWDC today, I think it just shows software developers. There's a battle for developers, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Apple. AR, VR is going to clearly be one of the enticing areas. And that's why, this is one, it's no different than a showroom. And they're all trying to court the developers. That's the hearts and lungs of software.
Really, that story had me watching. I thought it was fascinating. Now, you mentioned AR and VR. To us somewhat uninitiated, walk us through the difference, the strengths among AR, augmented reality, VR, virtual reality, the metaverse, and why not throw in wearable technology for good measure?
Look, I think right now there's obviously a lot that's intertwined, because I could argue AR and especially VR is really the start of the metaverse. Look, metaverse is essentially a fancy word for the next version of AR, VR. But ultimately, if you look today, you look at Oculus and you look what's going to be ultimately Apple Glass when they come out with their headset. It's not really functional today that you're going to walk around with a headset. The goal is that over time, the next, call it 2, 3, 4 years, there's going to be ways that even through sunglasses, which would be Apple Glass, through other areas, you could basically be a virtual individual in a virtual world, including e-commerce. And that's really what Metaverse stands for.
Wow. Okay, let's go deeper into Metaverse. The CEO of United Technologies has said that there will be millions of destinations for the Metaverse over time, much like the millions of websites that are out there today. Do you buy that, and what does it actually mean?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like, what does it mean? Because when it comes to Metaverse, the biggest thing is okay, in the beginning, it's going to be gaming. Gaming is really from Unity to Electronic Arts, but that's why Microsoft's trying to buy Activision. That'll be the first initiative of Metaverse. Now, of course, down the road, depending on how many digital twins, how many virtual sort of Metaverse websites and e-commerce there are, that's how big it could get. But I do believe that comment is getting over the skis a bit. As someone that's covered internet back to late 90s to today, I still view Metaverse as fraction of where I view ultimately the Internet 2.0 in terms of where I see Web 3.0.
Interesting. Well, what's the likelihood? I really like Mark's story where they talk about, say, a Star Wars. The stars could go from Hong Kong to Singapore in a virtual world. Can this virtual world be incorporated into everyday life, like workplace, and are there risks, and what other kind of positives are out there?
Yeah, I think it's a stretch when it comes to everyday life in terms of 24/7. I think there will be snippets of it from a metaverse in terms of where you could ultimately go, that world from an e-commerce perspective. Do you build a virtual house? Could that ultimately be a property? If you really think about NFTs, is related in a lot of ways to metaverse, and we've seen the value of some of that. But in a market like this, where risk off is happening across the board, I think it definitely pushes out some of those metaverse initiatives. Even though companies like Facebook and others are obviously aggressively going after it, which is still a risky bet.
Elon Musk is never far away from the news. I want to kind of switch gears. Where do you think things stand with his Twitter deal? Because he's voiced some real concerns, and he seems to have a good point that a lot of bots are active on Twitter, and it could eventually sink this massive deal.
Yeah, look, I think part of it is it's a dog ate the homework scapegoat. I think he got cold feet in this market. Tesla's obviously come down about 400 billion in terms of market cap. Look, the bot is clearly an issue. Fake accounts, the value of Twitter. I think 70% chance he tries to walk away. But ultimately, Twitter board, they'll fight this in court. This will be a UFC battle between Musk as well as the Twitter board. Or he gets a deal much lower, $42 to $45. I think that will be kind of at least the price talk in terms of where the street's hoping a deal gets done.
And it wasn't like there weren't a million voices out there saying, why is he doing this? But anyhow, As always, Dan, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks very
Thank you.
much. Dan Ives.